Hello, Be Smart viewers. Welcome back to another engaging episode of Manager's Mantra, where we connect with industry icons who have made their mark in the world of business management. Today, we are excited to have Mr. Rishabh Goel, co founder of the FinTech company Credgenics, with us. In conversation with our journalist Garima Bangad, Rishabh sheds light on the Indian startup ecosystem, the skills required, and challenges that new entrepreneurs might face while starting a business in the fintech space. Without any further delay, let's just jump straight into the conversation.
Hello, Be Smart viewers. Today we have with us a personality who has been a part of the Forbes 30 under 30s list, an IIT Delhi alumnus, and the co founder of the fintech company Credgenics, Mr. Rishabh Goel. Welcome to Manager's Mantra, Rishabh.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Looking forward for the interaction.
Let's dive into the questions. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey from IIT Delhi to co founding a fintech startup?
Sure. No, I think it's a important question. A lot of awareness, at least for the startup ecosystem, has happened after Shark Tank got public viewership, and I think that started in India. So I know a lot of college students want to start up and uh, are ready to take on this entrepreneur journey, which is good because the awareness is happening. I think when we were there in college, right, all these things were instilled from a college network standpoint, but it was not a very mainstream idea to start up or work on it. Like now, the awareness is much higher. So during my time, I was part of entrepreneurship cell. So I was heading entrepreneurship cell of IIT Delhi for 2 years. There I got exposure to a lot of new ideas, founders, their thought process, their problem solving ability. So definitely there was an attraction to figure out how to do that. But now how to do it, how to do one yourself was a big question, for which I think I didn't have any answer at that point in time. And I thought it's better to get some exposure in the corporate area, to understand what it takes to build an organization, like also what an organization looks like. Like you should at least know how that organization looks like. So some experience is better, but I'm not saying that fresh graduates out of college cannot do startup. There are many examples where some of the founders and even the college dropouts have made big companies. So that is not a big milestone, but in terms of percentage, if you see, maybe people who have some experience in a professional world or corporate world, the success rates might be higher overall in a percentage level. So I got up my first job in the financial services space, which was Deutsche Bank, post my graduation from college. Then after Deutsche Bank, I spent some time with BlackRock. So it was mostly on the investment side, but there I at least got exposure to the financial services ecosystem in general, whether it is the wealth ecosystem or the investment ecosystem, or maybe the overall lending and financial services and payments ecosystem. And India was innovator in terms of the financial services. Like if you see India in comparison to the West or maybe any Southeast Asian country for that matter, at least they have been innovating and are ahead on the curve when it comes to financial services at least. So getting some advantage of how you can leverage the existing ecosystem to build something in that was a thought process, and having exposure to the financial world, it was easier for us to figure out some problem which exists in that same market and try to build on it. But it is also a lot of hit and try. Like there is no single answer, and I think there's a lot of pivots, etc. You have to do. But still, I would say that the grit and the passion to do it and the passion to find any problem and solve it, it makes like for everything. So from my perspective, any college student who wishes to do anything, they should just keep that and jump into it. And like they will be eventually be able to find an actual problem which requires a solution versus some hypothetical problem which they might have thought while brainstorming. So it's important to hit the markets to get to understand things, and obviously that becomes the start of a startup journey.
Great. That was a definitely great insight to have for our students. So now coming to the fact that Credgenics is almost on the verge of becoming a unicorn, can you tell us what is it to start a company and then see it to grow into a unicorn? What are the unique steps that you might have taken to push the startup to this level?
So I think feel that yes, all the tags and statuses with respect to valuation, etc., almost everyone chases, and that becomes so much glamorous, right, these days. But if you see, the ecosystem is changing for good. Now the discussion around in the startup ecosystem is mostly around what is the profitability of that startup, what is actually the bottom line of the entire P&L versus the overall top line, which was helping them get attractive valuation. So in the current scheme of things, we have seen that a lot of focus has now shifted from the valuation status to an actually a profitable business making status. Our thesis, and I think our DNS and start is to run it very organically, and also run it very focusing a lot on the actual business profitability and on the bottom line P&L. We have been doing the right things from day one. There is some expenditure, there is some investment which you have to do in R&D, there is some expenditure which you have to do in technology. So you will be any which ways, I think, spending that much amount, but at least you need to see some ROI out of the amount being invested in a lot of technology, people, or maybe building the company. So in the initial days, like if you start any company for that matter, in the initial days, the first question you have to ask is whether you're actually solving a problem statement or is it a hypothetical problem which you're trying to solve.
Right.
Because sometimes we as founders are so much obsessed with our ideas that we don't realize that that is not the need of the market. It is like some problem which we might have faced, and it is not a generic problem statement. So something obviously you can relate to and which is also applicable to masses is one actual problem statement. If you are able to find out that, if you're able to find out a product to that, then the first thing is establishing a product market fit, which can happen without much funds in your bank account. You can do it very organically, very frugally, without much funds. Once you're able to figure out that there's a PMF now, we know that this product problem is decent enough. You know that the market for this is huge. And now it is only about scaling this and building a company out of it. There you require funds, but I think the funds infusion also has to happen in a way that it is not growth at any cost. It has to be an investment which will ultimately seek you results in and in the profits in the longer term. But there has to be visibility in terms of when you are able to get some profitability out of it. So from our side, I think we have been trying to do and invest in a lot of new ideas, but also maintaining a very strong focus on spending money in the right direction and focusing a lot on the P&L. In terms of overall company building, if you ask me about, right, how does the company overall scales and builds? I think these are the basic steps: figuring out PMF, then putting in the right set of people to drive that. So first challenge is raising capital, which essentially would be not be a challenge if you're able to figure out product market fit with a good solution. Once you've raised capital, then figuring out the right set of people internally to run the show. And then fifth is building the culture of the company and then trying to figure out what all new areas you can innovate on. So if you're able to do all these things programmatically, and obviously you will do a lot of mistakes in on the way, right? But there are so many books, there are so many stories, there are so many people in the network which you can speak to. You can look at their journeys and avoid mistakes which they might have done to fast track it. So there's no single answer to running a successful company. Everyone has its own route and everyone has its different path. But yes, like if you are able to do the basics right, at least you know that you will land up somewhere.
Right. That was great. Now jumping to the next question. How do you think has the startup ecosystem facilitated starting a business in India?
Uh, you see, startup ecosystem in India is evolving to a great extent, and the reason is that a lot of support is coming from the startup founders who are already successful, have built companies. So they turn into angel investors and then try to seed in innovation in the companies. They, because everyone has limited time, right? Even like while we are running this company, I know there are so many problem statements I come across, and I feel that it's so exciting that there should be some startup in this space who should be solving it. And for that matter, I cannot, because I am constrained on time, I am constrained on a lot of other things. So the best way I can be a part of this is like I know that there must be someone who is solving that problem, or maybe I'll circulate that problem statement in my network if someone wants to work on it or make it big. And the way they are able to contribute is they are able to put in some seed capital or some angel investment. Like I myself have done a lot of investment in startups just because I like the problem statement and the idea around it. And what in return we can provide is our guidance, like for like what has happened in our journey and how they can learn from us and get faster, right? So that ecosystem has evolved that we were able to raise a lot of initial capital from founders, and now it is a way to give back to the ecosystem. So now we as a founders are investing a lot of young startups. And that ecosystem has evolved to a larger extent that you are able to learn from the mistakes of the other people and evolve faster. So, and the entire overall startup ecosystem, I think, has got a lot of positive energy and a lot of momentum after Shark Tank. I think awareness was lesser, at least in the common masses. But now running a startup has become fancy, which was not the case earlier. Earlier, it used to be a startup or a venture where a lot of people were very positive about it. I think people were very happy with the established shops. But now I think everyone has got that exposure. So, like even in the masses, people have that acceptability towards the startup. Um, so overall ecosystem is evolving for good, even from a government policy standpoint. There are a lot of term loans, a lot of loans which they have provided, at least at a scheme level, that they'll be able to offer some collateral free loans or provide some initial seed capital to the startups who want to start maybe in the rural segment or the agricultural segment, or a lot of segments have been listed there. So overall, even the government, even the individuals, and the overall economic pace is like gearing up. And if you see now, the public equity markets in India are also very supporting a lot of the growth based momentum which we have. So overall, the outlook looks great. I think we are like how China was like 7 to 10 years back. So maybe in terms of the growth, the highest growth is expected out of India in the entire world, and that is just because how new businesses and startups would come in, and the entire ecosystem is facilitating that. So you will see a lot of new startups coming in and taking this economy to actually a $10 trillion economy, which I think a lot of global leaders now claim.
That's so true. And do you believe that, shows like Shark Tank have actually made it easier for families to also accept the fact that, their kids want to start businesses and, instead of getting into the more reliable uh, job work, start businesses and invest a bigger amount of money?
Yeah, I think that awareness has come in. Like no one was aware about small businesses and startups, right? When you used to call a word startup, people used to get scared. At least the parents used to get scared that why are they leaving a well-established shop and entering in a sea of unknowns where they don't understand what the risk is. And no one was encouraging anyone to start up. It was like, why you want to disturb your well-paying established job, or maybe you should go for a government job versus doing any business, because the mindset and the perception is that any business requires a huge capital per se, and someone who is not coming from a business background, it becomes very difficult for them to digest the fact that our kids would be able to do some business without that backing which they have. So that is the main mindset problem. But now seeing that at least there is an investor ecosystem out there who will be ready to put behind capital, behind the right set of people and the right set of ideas, and you don't require a capital yourself, like huge capital yourself. Obviously you require some huge capital yourself to start any business. So that has eventually increased awareness, and people have become aware about this, that there are people who can become like who can become self-made billionaires, millionaires, etc., also from scratch without any business background. From that perspective, it is the overall awareness which has increased, which is helping everyone. And there is no push from the family now. If anyone says I want to start up, I think they are supporting them in whatever way could they can. And there are so many people in my network I know that were facing some resistance from the family, but now it is not there. So it's good for India in general.
Great. Now let's talk about, some of the skills that a fresher who's right out of a B school would require to enter the fintech business world.
Hmm. So see, I would say that honestly, any graduation, whether it is an MBA or a BTech, any graduation, I think they should be teaching sales. Sales is one skill which is required everywhere. Whether you are sitting in a job, you are selling yourself. Whether you are in a company, you are selling some product or service. I think this is one major area where I feel all of the colleges lack. That anything and everything in life, if they want to achieve professionally, they should be good in sales. Even if you are a techie or a coder, you should be able to sell your work. You should be able to sell what you're working on, what you're investing time in. So that skill is the most important skill which exists for any business. I'm not talking specifically about on the fintech space, but for anything, that is one important area where you should like people should spend some time or maybe figure out how they can develop that, because that is one important skill which is required in lifetime in general. And for starting the business, that is like a prereq. You cannot do any business for that matter in that segment. Now, specifically coming to the fintech space, I think that is something which anyone who has been studying, so fintech is essentially divided in three parts. Like one is payments, where a lot of innovation has happened, whether it is PhonePe, Paytm, Bharat Pay, right? A lot of these guys streamline the payments ecosystem, making it through UPI, QR code, a lot of things which will help you settle directly. So a lot of innovation happened on the payment. Second vertical, if you talk about, is investment slash wealth, where a lot of these investment apps like Grow, Zerodha, or maybe some of the startups who are helping manage wealth, I&D wealth, are there on the investment side of things. So a lot of innovation, etc., is happening there also, and a lot of new things are coming in small case. A lot of advisory services startups have come in that helping people to tell in which stocks you should apply and how should when you should exit. A lot of these advisory things have come in. So this is an entire space where a lot of innovation is happening. Now, the third broader vertical, if you leave aside insurance for that matter, in the BFSI, we say banking, financial services, and insurance. So, if you leave aside insurance, there are three more broader verticals: payments, this investment slash wealth, and third is the lending. Now we are into that lending ecosystem, like we are trying to streamline the entire lending part, but these are the three broader areas. Now, within these three broader areas, there are so many different problems to be solved. So someone who has an exposure to the entire financial services space would be able to identify some sort of problem space in these exactly three areas, and will say that I want to solve this or I want to solve that. But to even figure out a problem statement, I think you require some exposure to these fields. So someone who has worked in any of these fields, in payment space, or maybe in the investment space, or maybe in the lending space, they'll be able to come up with much better problem statements. So for that matter, like I spending so much time in the lending ecosystem solving the corrections problem, I know thousands of different problems which exist in lending. So we know there are thousands of startups which can come in lending, but I can impart that knowledge to a third person. But till the time they have not seen that themselves, they will not be able to build the business in the right direction. So hence, it's important for any of them to at least join a financial services company to understand how this space works, to understand what are the biggest challenges in this space, and then figure out what can be a solution to such problem statement. Hypothetical problem solving ability, if you don't have any exposure to that space, is something which ideally will not help you scale that much, because you are not maybe solving the right problem. So at least finding the actual problem by spending some time or servicing in that industry, I think that is very, very important. So anyone who wants to start in fintech, at least join some fintech organization for a couple of years, figure out what exactly is the problem statement. Unless you are so confident yourself, basis your network, that you have come across some problem statement which you know exists in the network and no one has solved it and has been validated, until and unless you have that exposure, you should try to get exposure first and then explore what all things can be done in the fintech space.
Yeah. So let's talk about the challenges that one should prepare for while starting a business or entering the fintech industry. What are the challenges one should be prepared to face in this field?
As I was telling, right, some firstly is the problem solving, and then once you have, like, I think narrowed down the problem statement, figure out what you want to do. At least in the fintech space, you have to work with a lot of banks, you have to work with a lot of organizations which are regulated, irrespective of the fact that whether you come in the regulatory sphere or not. But your partnerships or your backend partner or a supply side or your demand side, some of them would be banks or NBFCs or financial services company. If you're into payments, you will require a backend infra supported by a bank. If you're into lending, you will require a bank to service them. If you're selling to the banks, NBFCs, in which you're selling to the financial services. So the broader category of the fintech is like revolving around these financial services players, or maybe RBI, which is our regulatory body. So I think the first major challenge which you have to be very thought through is that you are entering a regulated world, and there are a lot of regulations which will come your way. So you have to be very, very prepared, strong, from a compliance standpoint, and figure out that what is the actual problem statement to be solved. In financial services, the beauty is that you're sitting in the flow of money. So whether it's a recession or it's a good time, like you will hardly see any financial services companies losing money. So financial services is one major space where it is, I would say, recession proof, because if even if the market is going down, there are people who are shorting the market and get money, making money out of it. Or maybe on the lending side also, if there is somewhat of recession, the lending increases. So a lot of these areas are cooling, but overall as a market, the financial services is never the one which takes a downstream, unless the economic condition, global economic condition, etc. Everything takes a south, on which probability is hardly 1% that everything will go wrong your way. So in general, I think just figure out the right problem statement, financial services can easily scale. And especially on the fintech side, if you are coming into the fray, be aware about the compliance with the regulations, because ignorance, you cannot plead ignorance if you are found guilty. So you cannot just say that I was not aware about this. So that is something you have to be very, very cautious about.
Right. So now, it was also mentioned in Shark Tank India that a lot of entrepreneurs are entering the fintech industry. Do you think that this space is getting a little saturated now?
I think Shark Tank is more around actually D2C brands who are directly selling to the consumers. In fintech, honestly, I think the entire lot of innovation happened, but a lot of it has to happen. So it's like it's a long way till the time we achieve. Though we are ahead on the curve, if you compare us even with the US, the payments ecosystem, the UPI, a lot of these innovations are way ahead in terms of innovation, but still there's a long way to go. In terms of credit penetration, for that matter, just to give you an example, we are hardly 5% population in India has got credit, and the requirement is more than 50% of people actually want credit, whether it is in form of small business loan or any other loan. And we are not able to underwrite them because of the risk profiles, etc. But if you see a simple data point, in US markets, there are roughly 300 million population. 300 million is the population, which is 30 crore. The overall credit cards in US is 120 million. Yes, 12 30 crore population, 120 crore credit cards, which essentially makes four credit card per person is an average there. In India, we have a population of 1.5 billion, which is 150 crore. And the overall credit card base, the overall credit card disperses 6.6 crore, which is 66 million, and unique customer base of roughly 33 million, which is 3.3 crores. So the overall credit cards in India, credit card holders in India are roughly 3 crores out of a population of 150 crores. In US, that ratio is 4 times the population. So you can see the level of credit penetration which is there in India. That's one big problem, right? So essentially, how will that be solved? A lot of fintech lending companies have to come in who will be able to underwrite some of these riskier categories of people and give them a loan, who actually wants to be micro entrepreneurs or start a small business. So this is one way you can do lending, and a lot of fintech innovation is required on this side, which we are also assisting into, in terms of we are supporting them on collection side so that they can scale their overall lending book. And there are so many examples apart from this also in the investment side also. The overall equity market is going up, but the potential to grow that is huge. So from that perspective, it is very important that you are able to figure out the right problem statement and then figure out the solution. So there's a long way to go.
That is so true. So, talking in terms of growth, many startups these days are facing difficulties to grow their business once they reach the unicorn status. So, what do you think is the reason for this?
I think one big reason which honestly everyone face is the overall size of the market. There's an addressable market which everyone knows is limited in its own way. So different people try to add different product suits to it, or maybe globally expand their solution because the market might be suitable for the same product outside India also. So maybe a lot of unicorns. Firstly, I think there are two parts to it. One is a lot of unicorns are focusing on growth versus profitability. So now the trend has changed. Like they try to focus more on the bottom line P&L and try to become profitable versus spending anything and achieving growth at any cost. So that is one major shift which has happened, which might turn them off, like which might make their overall growth flatline. And people feel that they're not growing, but actually they're focusing on improving their profitability. A second is the size of the market is limited, right? In India, also, we know that for the matter of fact, a lot of startups in the Indian ecosystem gets restricted by we call TAM, which is total addressable market. So now to solve for that, either they add new product suits to their fray, which can be sold to the same market, or they try to expand globally, which is outside India, where the problem statement remains the same, which is maybe in the Southeast Asian markets like Indonesia, or maybe a lot of companies here are selling to the US. So after getting to a certain level of growth and certain level of numbers, it's difficult to, I think, get the other half. And the reason also is that in the initial journey, right, you are easily able to pluck the low-hanging fruits. Now, as you scale and as you become bigger, now the only fruits left are the ones which were hard to crack earlier also. So now your entire growth depends on that. And overall baseline changes. Baseline earlier, maybe you were able to achieve 100% year-on-year growth. But as a revenue scale, like for that matter, we were doing, let's say, 25 crore 2 years back. And now that scaled to 100 crores, which is 4 times revenue. Now from 100, it has gone to 200. If you see in absolute terms, we have added 100 crores of revenue. But in percentage growth, it's only 100% versus 400% by adding 75 crore of revenue. So as the baseline also increases, it becomes difficult to keep on adding that growth, right? Absolute terms, it might be higher, but in overall percentage terms, it becomes lower. So maybe this is the reason, one reason where it might be the case.
That was really insightful. Thank you so much for all the beautiful tips and the knowledge that you've shared with us and our students today. It was great having a conversation with you.
No, same here. Thanks a lot, Garima. Thank you.
That was Rishabh Goel speaking about the startup ecosystem in India. Thank you, Garima, for taking us through this insightful conversation. Be Smart viewers, hope this discussion provided you insights into the world of business and added value to your professional journey. Please share your queries and feedback on bsmart.edit@bsmail.in.